Hello and welcome back. Today I've got another good old-fashioned horror stories video for you. And if you're new to my channel, hi, my name's Hannah. I make a lot of videos about multi-level marketing companies, financial scams, weird social media trends, influencer craziness, for the purpose of entertainment, but also for viewer education. Sort of like, here's the weird things to look out for and to beware of and to protect yourself from. One of the huge topics being multi-level marketing companies. And for this series on my channel, viewers send me submissions of some wacky, horrific, tragic, sometimes silly and lighthearted stories of their experiences with MLM companies and with their unhinged reps. This is the 95th video in that series, and so I can link the full playlist below for you if you want to take a deep dive into that. What's pretty amazing is I've been making these MLM horror stories videos for I think 2 years now, if not more. And like I said, this is the 95th video in the series, and I am still receiving stories of things that I have never heard about before. It's like the more and more of these videos I make, more and more people come forward to share their crazy experiences. So in saying that, I'm always looking for more submissions. So if you have your own MLM horror story that you'd like to have considered for a video, the instructions on how to send that to me are in the description box of every video. I'm looking at my lineup of stories that I've picked today, and I think some of these are really gonna appall you, so let's get right into it. This story says, "Hi Hannah, I hope you're well. This might be a bit complicated. English isn't my first language, but it's something I felt worth sharing given how shocking it's been for my family. After watching your anti-MLM videos, I noticed a theme of random ants stuck in MLMs, and I have my own story to add to that mix. Trigger warnings for cancer, death, and plenty of audacity." Thank you for that trigger warning. That's a funny one. "I'll be using aliases for privacy. A bit of background, my mother grew up with 4 other siblings. Cancer has unfortunately been a recurring challenge for my family. And despite many battling it, my uncle, let's call him D, eventually decided after years of battling that he'd had enough of chemo. He just wanted to spend his final days fishing with a cold beer in hand. At this point, his wife V, who's an amazing woman, was untouched by the MLM world. Their kids were in their teens, so you can imagine how hard that time was for them. Shortly after D passed, V was approached by an Herbalife rep. V became totally absorbed in this health and wellness narrative, convinced that Herbalife was her way to help others. We bought from her to support her, knowing that she was raising 2 teens alone. Our pantry was always stocked with Herbalife shakes and potions, and my grandparents, despite their modest retirement funds, pitched in. But as the years passed and the kids grew up, our family gradually stopped buying the products for various reasons. Over the past decade, though, V has become what I would call a full-fledged Herbalife mogul. I think she's currently at the GET rank. And I did look this up. GET seems to stand for Global Expansion Team within Herbalife. This is kind of within the top ranks of the company, and that's a milestone rank to get to. The t-shirt, the pins, the hat, she even has an Herbalife pendant necklace. No matter the occasion, she's in her Herbalife gear pitching the products and making comments about everyone's weight and lifestyle, even though most of us lead healthy lives given our family's health history. She even tried to sell Herbalife at her son's wedding. Yes, that happened. A few weeks ago, I got a phone call from my mom who was distraught, which is super unlike her. When I asked what was wrong, she explained that she'd just been on a video call with V and my other aunt. V was in the doctor's office during the call. The doctor told V that she had breast cancer and she needs immediate treatment to prevent complications. Here's where it gets insane. During the appointment, V, still on the phone with my mom and aunt, started arguing with the doctor, insisting that she didn't want treatment and would instead, quote, go the natural path with Herbalife products. The doctor emphasized that the cancer could be easily treated, but she wasn't hearing it. It was heartbreaking, especially since V saw her own husband fight through cancer with every available treatment, conventional and alternative. My mom and her sister tried to reason with her, pointing out how devastating that decision would be for her sons, but V was not hearing anything. To make matters worse, this was almost the 1-year anniversary of another brother's passing from throat cancer, a terrible time for V to be making these choices. After this, my mom and I discussed everything from potential reasons that V might be reacting this way to how we would break the news to my grandparents. Understandably, they would be devastated. A few days later, after the appointment, V's son found out, not directly from her, but through her Facebook posts. As you might imagine, they were furious, but they tried to help her and even offered to cover the cost of treatment and her recovery time, even though thankfully our healthcare system would make most of it free. Despite this, V refused, which led to her sons to cut off contact to avoid essentially watching their last living parent choose an avoidable fate. Dang, that's a heavy sentence. I can't even fathom what that would be like to have, your last living parent be diagnosed diagnosed with something that is treatable. The doctor's saying, here's your route to treatment. We can get you back on track in X amount of time if you just follow these steps. And she's like, no thanks, I've got this. I've got Herbalife on my side. Oh, it's haunting. It's really upsetting. Since then, V has kept posting on social media promoting Herbalife as her miracle cure. It's heartbreaking to watch her destroy relationships over a company that doesn't care about her and certainly doesn't support the health claims she's making. She's so far deep in the hole that it'll have to take a miracle to get her out of it. My grandparents thankfully took the news okay, but they're honestly just disappointed, and I can tell they're stressed more than anything. Thank you for reading my story, and I hope V can just wake up soon and see that it's self-sabotage. You know, this story is really heavy and heartbreaking. For me personally, I've had 2 people close to me diagnosed with breast cancer, and I can't even begin to imagine how traumatic it would have been for the rest of the family if that person had decided that they're not gonna go with what has been proven to work and what has been proven to treat them, to help them live longer, to help improve their quality of life, and instead they're gonna go for this unproven course of treatment. I don't even know if I can call it treatment because that's not what these products are intended or designed to do. In fact, that sounds like a massive lawsuit if people start claiming that Herbalife can cure cancer. That's not something that the company itself claims. So it makes you wonder, where did your aunt get this impression that these products can do something like that? And my assumption, based on what I've seen in the industry of multi-level marketing, is that these kinds of rumors are circulated by the reps themselves in the interest of trying to get people to buy these products, thinking that they are the miracle cure, that whatever health ailment you have in your life, this will solve it. Cancer, no problem. Herbalife will help, which is obviously not true. That's not the case. You cannot be making health claims like that, but it's a really hard thing to regulate behind closed doors. We're talking like personal face-to-face conversations with people. There's not somebody from Herbalife headquarters watching everybody's personal conversations being like, that's false, you can't say that. No, these rumors run rampant because this person heard from that person who heard from that person this testimony of their cousin's sister's aunt who did this and took that product and it cured this thing, and it gets completely blown out of proportion, all in the name of making money. It's a sales pitch at the end of the day. And what's the tried and true way to sell to people? You identify their areas of need and then you sell the product to them as the solution. And it sounds like in your story, your aunt was involved with Herbalife before she was diagnosed with cancer, and she was kind of caught in it in that time after she had just lost her husband, that vulnerable period. So we can't really say that in her case, it was pitched to her like, oh, you've got cancer, I've got the product to help. But because she was already ingrained in that company and in that business model, no doubt she's heard these kinds of testimonies within that community already. She's prepped and primed to believe that these products will be the solution for her when and if she is diagnosed with certain health conditions in the future. And here we go. What that all culminates to is a diagnosis that is treatable with a certain course of action and a person who is denying that treatment because their belief in Herbalife is so much stronger. And just imagine the level of brainwashing that has to happen for you to think that your Herbalife pills and powders are going to be more effective in cancer treatment than the proven cancer treatment itself. It's horrifying. All of it is really, really awful, especially given the fact that it sounds like your family has dealt with lots of different cancer diagnoses, and here's this one relative who is making a really hard choice for herself, and everyone just kind of has to sit back and watch that happen. It doesn't sound like there's much to be done or much reasoning that you can do with her, and everyone just kind of has to stand aside and watch this play out however it's meant to play out, and that is a terribly helpless feeling. All because somewhere along the line your aunt got this impression that Herbalife products have the ability to treat her, which is false, and that's not true, and Herbalife as a company doesn't stand behind those claims. But like I said, the issue is with the reps themselves spreading that misinformation in a completely uncontrolled environment. I would say that this is an example of probably the most extreme negative outcome that somebody can experience from being in an MLM. That somebody's life is literally on the line because of the misinformation they've received and the lies they've been told. This goes far beyond losing a couple $100, having a stack of products in your house that you're never going to get through. No, this is life and death. And it really speaks to the level of brainwashing that must be going on within these companies for somebody to believe something this insane about a company's products to the point where they're willing to risk their life for it. I'm deeply sorry that your family is going through this. I don't particularly have any advice or words of wisdom because I don't know how I would react in that situation. I guess the best we can hope for is that at some point she does realize like, okay, maybe I shouldn't put all of my trust in these products, or she gets to a point where she's realizing, oh, they're not actually working and things are getting worse. Maybe I should go to more conventional treatment options. I really hope that if she does come to a crossroads where she's forced to reevaluate her course of treatment, that she does choose to leave Herbalife behind, because her life quite literally could depend on it. I've got even more shocking stories coming your way, but first I'd love to give a moment for the sponsor of today's video, the Paired app. You know me, I've been using the Paired app for years now, and I love to tell everybody I know about it. Paired is a relationship care app designed to help couples strengthen their communication and deepen their emotional connection. There's daily activities that you complete with your partner on virtually any topic you can imagine: communication, conflict, sex and intimacy, money and finances, home and work, and you can select all kinds of activities based on these topics. There's games, there's quizzes, there's even collections of activities called journeys, but I personally enjoy the questions the most because it allows you to address the topic in your own words. And I always get really excited to see what my husband responds, because sometimes I think I know exactly what he's gonna say, but then a lot of times he surprises me. And a really cool feature is that your partner's responses are locked until you submitted your own answers, which I find to be really beneficial because it ensures that you're answering from the heart and you're not being swayed by your partner in one way or another based on like their body language or what they said before you gave your answer, where you're thinking, oh, maybe I should change up my answer. And the Paired app gets us talking about things that we probably otherwise wouldn't. It's really fun to search through the library of questions on the app and be like, ooh, wait, that's a good one. Actually, that would be really helpful to know about him, or I'm really interested to see his answer for that one. Sometimes the questions are fun and lighthearted, like describe your favorite thing about your partner's laugh. Or sometimes they're kind of deep and emotional, like what's one defense mechanism that you learned to adopt during your childhood and why? And if you're ever wondering how completing this particular activity or answering this question is going to help your relationship, there's a button for that on the app. For this question specifically, it explains that learning about your partner's family history, their memories, their childhood, that it helps you understand kind of how they see the world, and therefore creates a stronger foundation to build your relationship on. And there's also lots of spicy questions too, which I'm not going to put on the screen right here. You're just going to have to discover those for yourself. To maintain and deepen connection with your partner, you can click the link in the description box below. This is going to give you a 7-day free trial plus 25% off Paired Premium. Thanks again, Paired, for your continued support of the channel. This story says, "Hi Hannah, I recently discovered your channel as Pay Money Wubby featured your unschooling video on one of his streams, and I've been absolutely hooked on your influencer insanity / anti-MLM content ever since." That's so awesome. How cool. Watching your channel has made me realize I've been surrounded by MLM huns and MLM paraphernalia from a young age without ever realizing that's what they were, even in my own family. For context, I'm 33 years old now, so even though I've not been around during ancient MLM times, I have lived through some of the modern classics: Pampered Chef, Pure Romance, Tupperware, etc. I'm originally from the United States, but I've been living in the Netherlands for the last 10 years, so I've been far removed from MLM culture for a while now. I didn't even know what Young Living, Monat, Beachbody, or any of those were until watching your videos. Like I mentioned, I never really knew what an MLM was while I was growing up. Every now and then, my mom and grandma would have parties at our house that were sort of girls' nights for their friends, my aunts, and cousins. There would always be good food, fun chats, and music, but they always referred to them as demonstrations. So, Tupperware demonstrations, makeup demonstrations, sex demonstrations. I'm assuming for companies like Pure Romance that sell adult toys. They wouldn't allow us kids to attend those ones, obviously. Not like I knew what any of that meant anyway, but now as an adult, referring to them as sex demonstrations is a wild choice of words. Especially now living in the Netherlands, sex demonstration definitely has a different meaning here. I have an MLM horror story that actually traumatized me as a child, and because I tend to be an overthinker and my brain likes to resurface old memories that I wish I could nuke into orbit, I can now vividly share it with you and your audience and hopefully give it a place of rest. Story time. Anyway, I cannot remember which specific MLM party it was, but I remember it was makeup related and one where I was allowed to be present. I was very young at this point, so early school aged, and as these parties usually go, someone gets sucked into hosting a party. My mom always offered our house, even though it was not her hosting in specific, because we had a living space that was the most functional for these get-togethers, and she just enjoyed hosting parties in general. A consultant would come, and for a portion of the parties, they would share info about their products, play some games with the group, the whole typical MLM dance. For whatever reason, this consultant only had one catalog that we had to pass around the group to browse for anything that we saw and we liked. My mom allowed me to pick out something for myself, as at that time I was really into playing dress up, so she thought that it would be nice to get me a lipstick or a blush to use while I was in character. This is during the golden age when Toys R Us, Walmart, Kmart, and all of those stores would send out magazines during the holidays featuring all the hot items and toys. And we would normally go through them them and circle the things that we liked so that our parents could show Santa for reference. So I thought this was the same type of thing. At this point, everyone had already looked at the consultant's catalog, so I took it and I shuffled off to a corner of the living room with a pen to go make my wish list. After about 10 minutes of browsing, a blood-curdling scream lets out and everyone freezes, including me. I look up and the consultant is seething, looking directly at me. Honestly, if the phrase "if looks could kill" was a reality, the next party my mom would be hosting was my funeral, because holy this woman was furious. I was so terrified. I had no idea what was happening, what I did, or what was gonna happen to me. I just froze in panic as this woman started yelling at me at the top of her lungs for ruining her catalog. I don't think I've mentioned this, but I'm from South Philadelphia, and let's just say our women are built different. As in, they can be your best friend, your wingman, they'll give you the shirt off their back if it's the last one they have and you're in need. That is until you cross them. Normally, I would not say that this is the best of qualities as it's a bit flaky. However, in this moment, it was everything I needed and more. As I'm cornered like a helpless animal being berated by this woman I did not know, she suddenly lifted off of her feet by some unknown force and is literally being carried across the living room to the front door. The unknown force revealed to be my mom and my mom's cousin. They actually physically threw this woman out the front door onto the streets of Philly. My mom's cousin came back, snatched the catalog out of my hand, and threw it out the door at her along with her case of products that went flying everywhere. We spent the next 10 minutes eating our snacks at the window, watching this woman collect all of her things out in the street while my older family members were calling her the most creative words I've ever heard in my life, even to this day. I never saw this woman again, nor have I asked about who she was. For my entire life, I could not figure out why this woman was so mad at me. But now I've realized since watching your videos, that's likely because she had to pay for that catalog herself and probably didn't have much income to purchase more. That was probably the only catalog she owned, period, and I ruined it. Oopsie. Thanks for taking the time to read my submission. I hope you enjoyed it, and I wanted to thank you for number one, putting that last piece of the puzzle together for me. I can now rest easy knowing that I didn't do anything wrong and that the lady was not batshit crazy. Well, she might have been, but I'll at least give her the benefit of the doubt. And she was probably just extremely upset seeing her last metaphorical dollar being scribbled on by a child. And number two, for making all of this great anti-MLM content. You're so well-spoken, empathetic, and non-combative with your approach, and I think if anyone that's stuck in the MLM sphere is going to let anyone's words sink in, they will be yours. Looking forward to sharing more of my interesting stories with you, as I have several. Well, thank you for those kind words at the end. I really appreciate that. And what a great story. Oh my gosh. I'm just imagining this room full of women all coming together to stand up for you, a helpless child who's like, I have no idea what's going on. What's wrong? Why am I in trouble? And we may never know exactly why she was so upset about that. I could be mistaken. So if anyone's familiar with Mary Kay, Avon, how they work specifically, let me know in the comments. But I think it is a thing that you have to place your own orders for these marketing materials. They get delivered to your house, and it's your responsibility now to disperse them to your customers or your potential customers. Don't quote me on any of that. I hope that I'm not spreading misinformation here by saying that. But even if she didn't have to pay for that catalog specifically and her anger towards that situation wasn't money related at all, it was still really important to her. Obviously, it's something that was part of her marketing kit that she likely took with her from place to place. She was likely expecting to reuse it and didn't want it drawn all over. Or maybe she just didn't know that you were actually trying to order things or to select things that you wanted to order. Maybe from her perspective, she looks over and there's a kid in the corner like drawing all over her marketing materials, you know? I would assume that if your goal is to be at this party and to let everyone in the room look through this catalog to place orders, you don't want some kid messing it up, right? From her perspective, at least. I can see how in that split moment, she sees what she sees, she makes a judgment about it, and she's furious. But still does not make it okay to run over to that kid, to tower over them, to yell at them. It's a child, for goodness sake. Like, this is a learning opportunity. Maybe this is like the early childhood educator in me coming across right now, but it's like, that's not the way you handle a situation like that. Learn to regulate yourself as an adult grown woman and recognize that this is a kid doing something that they don't know is bad in this moment, and you running over to terrorize them for it is not the most effective approach, okay? Is it reasonable to be upset that your catalog is being drawn in and ruined? Yes, sure, but it's not okay to handle it this way. That's what's not reasonable. And I just love the image of like everyone in the room kind of gathering together to come to your defense. Like, throw this lady on the street, Get her out of here. That's unacceptable. Everyone else was on the same page about that. Everyone recognized that was totally out of line, and they stood behind you. And that is such a beautiful thing. And as I'm saying all of this out loud and I'm kind of being judgmental about her reaction and being like that was unacceptable, because it is unacceptable, but maybe the context behind it is that this is likely a very stressful situation for her, right? Her income is on the line. She's carved out a certain amount of time in her life to come to this party, to do this thing. She's really hoping to make sales. There's probably a lot of pressure on herself or from her uplines. She's really got to close the sale, but the catalog that people are supposed to buy from is being destroyed or ruined in her eyes. So where are the sales going to come from? But I can understand within that context that that was likely the catalyst to this big explosive blow up. That was something that was likely building up within her long before you ever did that. And you are not to blame and you're not responsible for her reaction to her seeing that. But I guess a bright side to this story is that it sounds like now in adulthood, you're understanding more about what MLMs are, how they operate, the culture within those companies, maybe the motive behind her acting like this. And it's sort of like for the longest time, you've had this picture in your mind of that image of you being screamed at, but now the rest of the image is sort of being painted out. Like, oh, okay, that's what that party was for. It was for an MLM. She was trying to make sales. I was impeding that in one way or another, and she was upset with me. And I hope that you're able to understand that that has nothing to do with you. You were just a kid. You were doing what you thought you were supposed to be doing because your mom told you to go pick out a couple of things. And I hope you know now that that's not your burden to carry. You didn't do something horrifically wrong. She just had this grand overreaction to it because of the position she was in being an MLM consultant. Nevertheless, it makes for a very entertaining story. I really appreciate you taking the time to send this one in. This one says, "Hi Hannah, thank you so much for the work you do making the information available about MLM companies easy to understand and readily available public education. Your professional delivery, excellent research, and breakdown of the statistics is the aspirational way to address these topics and high control groups. I applaud your composure and compassion when addressing the people who found themselves victim to a predatory company taking advantage of their dreams to have a safe, secure, and happy life. For professional and personal reasons, please keep me anonymous." And that was all very, very kind of you to say thank you. My parents were first-generation college students and came from financially tenuous backgrounds. Early on in their careers, they were pitched the Amway business and were very involved in it. My parents are very smart and financially cautious people, but I think the hope of having financial independence so they could enjoy a life with their children without the stresses they had experienced in their youth is what attracted them to the business opportunity. As far back as I can remember, we helped with stocking the products my parents bought, went on road trips to conferences at least annually, and entertained ourselves while they pitched the business. As all of these MLM schemes do, the whole thing imploded for my parents. From what I remember, they started doing better than their upline, and they were frustrated when their hard work was being taken advantage of by ungrateful and petty people. I think at that point the mask was lifted and they could see that their efforts were not supporting them and their kids, but instead other people freeloading off of their time, money, and reputation. Thankfully, other than purchasing a couple cleaning products, we've done nothing with the business in the last 20 years. Good riddance. And you know, that is a really interesting perspective that you're bringing up. It sounds like your parents did well in Amway. They surpassed the performance of their upline. And usually you would think that that's a good thing. That means that you've succeeded, you're making good money, whatever it is. But what you're saying is that they were realizing, like, wait a minute, all the hard work we've put in to sell the products, to recruit people, is now being taken advantage of by the people that recruited us, and they don't have to work that hard. They're making money off of all of our hard work and our efforts, which is 100% true. That's how the business model works. But this might be the first time I've heard of somebody admitting that frustration of like, yeah, I'm doing well in my MLM, and because I'm working hard, other people don't have to work that hard, and that's annoying. And yeah, it is annoying, and that's okay to admit, but you don't hear people admit that very often. They're only focused on all the money and the success and the recognition that comes from doing well. They're not so willing to bring to light kind of the darker side of that. I'm writing to you specifically about the materials that we got from Amway that were designed to help keep people in the business via moderate brainwashing. We got cassette tapes, sadly I'm old enough to remember those, and CDs with lectures from prior conference speakers that we would listen to over and over. I think that was the method before the advent of social media to connect with your team. One of them that I remember vividly is called Message to Garcia. The story is basically about a general who needs to get a message to one of his commanders, Garcia, who is unreachable due to the current military conflict. conflict. The general asks his soldiers to do it, and one of them takes the message and leaves to find this man. This story got spun into a metaphor for the business in ways that I'm unwilling to waste mental computing power on. The last few minutes discussed how the person tasked with finding Garcia did so without asking one question. I was able to find the video recording of it online, and I've attached it here for you. As an adult, what sticks out to me now is how blind obedience is pitched as an admirable trait in the lecture. Never mind the faith manipulation. Here's the link. I'll leave the link below for you. This is a 40-minute video, so I'm not going to show it here, but feel free to check that out if you want to. I found it online, and the voice made me flash back to listening to these lectures while driving in our motorhome for the annual meeting. The other and worse propaganda that I vividly remember is the children's picture book called Just Wait Till We're Diamond by Celine Wood Meador. This was read to us often at night before bed. The book details a child and her family while they work towards reaching diamond status, one of the top ranks in the company, with the thesis that the sacrifices will all be worth it when they're diamond. I think that it was meant to help the kids accept the time that their parents were spending working on the business and help them buy into it. I found a link to the thrifted version of the book, as it, thank God, is no longer in print. If you're willing, I think it's worth the $15 as an example of the propaganda aimed at impressionable kids. I will warn you, the artwork is reminiscent of Tim Burton with big eyes. Here's the link. Well, what do we have here? I bought the dang book, okay? I had to see this for myself. And when I clicked on the link, it was actually only $8, so what a steal. You're right, these are not in production anymore. There are a couple on Amazon for like $60 or something, but thankfully I got it on Thrift Books for $8. The curiosity was absolutely killing me, and for $8, I could not do it. So we are gonna go through this book together. I am gonna point out the most concerning and problematic things, but what I can't do is sit here and open the book and read it to you teacher style, because that's a copyright infringement lawsuit waiting to happen, and I'm not interested in that. But thanks to the fair use doctrine, I can give you a synopsis of this book. I can summarize it for you in my own words. I can read you a few important quotes, and I can show you a couple pictures for the purposes of commentary, criticism, and education, which is what this is. So this is called Just Wait Until We're Diamond by Celine Wood Meador. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right. And the book is written about her real-life daughter named Reed. The main character in this book is a real-life person who is living out there in the world today and who could stumble on this video if they wanted to. And the story follows the perspective of Reed as her parents join Amway and try to rank their way up to the diamond rank. So I'm just gonna turn these pages for myself and kind of summarize it in real time. The story starts out with Reed waking up early in a hotel room, and she's just too excited to go back to sleep because this is the day that her parents are going to be recognized for going diamond. They've traveled away from home, they're at this Amway event of some kind, and her parents are going to be publicly recognized on stage for their achievement. Then the storyline flashes back to how her parents got involved with Amway initially. This quote from the book says, "There had been times in the past when Reed had wondered if this day would ever really come. She'd been waiting and waiting and waiting since she was 4 years old. Now she was almost 9. So it's implying that this has taken her parents 5 years of being in Amway to achieve the diamond rank. Certainly not the quick success that you often see promoted for an MLM scheme. It talks about how Reed's parents were so stressed and unhappy before they joined Amway, and there's this illustration of her parents sitting at the dining room table with their head in their hands and a worried look on their face as they're holding bills. Like, oh no, whatever will we do? Then it transitions into talking about how one day Reed's parents have their friends John and Mary over, where they pitch them the Amway opportunity. John asked if there was a blackboard in the house that he could draw on for his demonstration, and the book says, "Now sit down and listen," John said. "This is important." All Reed remembered was that John drew circles, 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 circles. And this is one of the illustrations I wanted to show you. Here you see Reed as a child, and here's John with his blackboard drawing essentially an MLM pyramid using circles, showing that you get involved with the business and then you recruit people who recruit people who recruit people. To have this illustrated in a children's book is one of the most wild things I've ever seen in my entire life. And the fact that it's written from the kid's perspective, like, oh yeah, John and Mary came over and they told my parents about this great new opportunity, and then they drew circles on the blackboard. Oh my God. Then Dad puts Reed to bed that night, and he tells her that they're going to start their own business and that they're going to make a ton of money, they're going to help a lot of people, and that one day when they're diamond, they'll have even more time to spend with her. Alluding to the whole like time freedom, you can spend more time with your kids narrative. Like, one day when we're successful, we're going to have the life of our dreams thanks to Amway. Then it talks about how Mom and Dad put pictures of their dreams and their goals all over the house, kind of as a daily reminder as to what they're working towards. And this part of the book says, so the whole family began doing whatever it took to build their business. Reed spent lots of hours in the evenings with her babysitter, Anne, while her parents did meetings for their group. She knew that she could help her mom and dad most by choosing to have a good attitude, which she did. So in my opinion, this is a book to brainwash children into being obedient and tolerant of their parents' involvement in an MLM business of some kind. Like, this is a family endeavor. We all have to be in this together. We all have to be willing to put in the work. Mom and dad are always gone at Amway meetings. I'm always at home with the babysitter, but that's okay. I'm gonna have a good attitude about it because that's what I can do as my role as a good child to help my parents be successful in Amway. Actually insane. The next pages say that Reed would go with her parents all over the country to different Amway events, and this quote from the book says, "Every Thursday, Reed helped her mom sort boxes of bottles and cans and tubes. She learned to sit quietly while her mom and dad talked on the phone, and she was sure that she listened to at least 1,000,000 tapes." Basically grooming children to be helpful, to be obedient, to be seen and not heard, in the name of mom and dad being able to do well in their MLM. Oh yeah, this page was crazy. I wanted to show you this. This is all about how Reed's dad quits his job. There he is waving goodbye to his boss at the office, and then outside the office window is this sign that says Reed's dad is free. Basically talking about how happy of a day that was that he got to quit his job to pursue the business full time. At this point in the story, we flash back to the hotel room scene where Reed wakes up early because it's the day of her parents' recognition ceremony, and this has got to be one of the most heartbreaking lines in a children's book I've ever read. As Reed got dressed, she thought of all of the hours that she had spent waiting for her mom and dad to come home from doing meetings for people. She thought of the many times she had waited for them to get off the phone and just talk with her. Now she knew for sure that it had all been worth it. This is a child in this book right here who is desperate for her parents' attention, and she's not getting it because they're too preoccupied with Amway, which is really ironic because MLM opportunities will often purport that, oh, when you join, you're going to have more time freedom. You're going to have more time with your kids, which we know could not be further from the truth. It's actually the opposite. You're not working a 9 to 5 anymore. Now you're working 24/7. And the children in the family bear the brunt of that by having absent parents. These children have parents that don't have time for them, that are too busy with their MLM business to pay attention to them, which is not a good thing. That's not a good family dynamic, but it's being presented in this book in a very brainwashy way, I might add, to be a good thing. Yeah, my parents didn't really pay attention to me the past few years, but that's okay. It's all worth it now because they're diamond. Heartbreaking, disgusting. And the story draws to a close by describing how her parents were called on stage at this recognition ceremony. They stepped out of this silver limo that was parked on the stage, and it says that the crowd was, quote, going wild, cheering and applauding and throwing them roses, all to celebrate their grand achievement of going diamond. It says that later during the speeches part of the ceremony, Reed falls asleep and her granddad picks her up and takes her upstairs in the hotel to go to bed. And the final line of this story says, as he tenderly tucked her in, he whispered, "Reed, I'm so proud because you worked hard and you believed in your dream. Now you don't have to wait any longer. You're finally a real, true, perfect diamond." And here's the problem with this. This was not Reed's dream. This was not her passion. This was not her goal in life. She was 4 years old when her parents joined the business. She had no say in the entire thing. She wasn't out there selling the products and recruiting people herself to get to diamond. She was the child of Amway reps that wasn't given a choice about being subjected to this kind of lifestyle. And this book, in my opinion, is intended to teach children how to cope with and how to tolerate their parents' involvement in an MLM. Because it can be really hard and damaging to a child when their parents are preoccupied all the time and don't have time for them. And in the case of this story, this is all happening over a 5-year period of time from the time she's 4 until she's 9 years old. These are the most formative childhood years where you're still reliant on your parents for pretty much everything. You're not fully able to be independent from them at this stage. But this book is basically saying, be a good, quiet kid and stay out of the way so that mom and dad can work the biz. And it's really important to note that the actual name Amway is not noted in this book anywhere. The entire storyline was presented in a very generic MLM way, presumably so that the storyline still applies and appeals to parents who are in different MLM companies. The generic nature of the story makes it so that you could be in Herbalife and still read this to your kids and it would still apply to your situation. This is perhaps the most disturbing children's book I've ever seen in my entire life. Thank God it's not in production anymore. The messaging is so problematic and very concerning, especially considering that most people who join Amway Amway are not going to make it to Diamond. They're not going to be recognized on stage. This is not something that will ever happen for them. But the messaging of this book is basically to say it's okay if your parents don't have time for you. It's okay if they're really busy, because one day when they reach the top ranks, it'll all be worth it. Except that most people who join Amway, or any other MLM for that matter, will never make it to that point. This book is instilling false hope. It's teaching kids to start believing in something that is statistically impossible for most people. I really do think this messaging is incredibly damaging, and I just have to point out one more thing on the cover. Look at the boat. It's the parents and Reed standing on a boat called The Dream. And the back of this book says, join Reed in her adventure as she learns that great things come to those who believe in the power of a dream. Truly wild. I'm not saying there's anything wrong to teach kids to think big, to dream big, to go after their goals, but when what we're talking about is an MLM scheme, you're basically setting them up for failure. That's like writing an entire children's book saying, go out there and buy the lottery tickets every single day, get yourself to a gas station, purchase a lottery ticket, and one day it'll finally work out for you. No, it's not. I just cannot believe that this is something that a person conceptualized for a book. They went through the process of writing the book. They published the book. They sold the book. People bought this book. I bought this book, I guess, but I bought it secondhand. This was published in 1993. That's before I was born. I would venture to say that that's probably before most people had a negative impression of MLMs. The hatred for MLMs is far more significant today than it was back then. And I think we can all see with a bit clearer eyes now how problematic this kind of a book is. So going back to this MLM horror story, I want to thank you for bringing this book to my attention. I had no idea it existed. And I want to be clear, this is an independent author. This is not a book produced or published by Amway itself. Like I said, that company is mentioned nowhere in this book. And now that I'm thinking about it, I guess I don't even have any physical proof that this author was in Amway specifically. I think I'm just making that connection and maybe making that wrong assumption that this author was in Amway because you're saying that this was a book read to you while your parents were in Amway. So maybe I should make that clarification. I don't actually know if Celine Woodmetter was ever in Amway specifically, but clearly this is about a multi-level marketing scheme. But a lot of the details in this story do kind of hint at Amway. The fact that it's two parents in the business together, that's pretty rare for other companies, but highly encouraged in Amway. The fact that they're going to late night meetings is also pretty specific to Amway, that they're talking about the rank diamond, which Amway does have. Based on all of those things, I'm assuming that this is an Amway-based book. But again, it can kind of be applied to any MLM. I thought I would read you a couple of the Goodreads reviews of this as well. There's only 3 of them and 2 of them are negative. This review says, disguised as a children's picture book, the author reifies her multi-level marketing tale through the experience of her own daughter. Every night as little Reed is tucked into bed, she's told, just wait until we're diamond. The book Flyleaf includes a text of scripture adding divine authority to the hard work and dreams that formed the formation of the 1980s pyramid prosperity gospel. Dark illustrations heighten the menacing feel, controlling aspect, and sinister tone of this tale. The family business, never named, can be none other than Amway. And that's 100% true. It says, all things are possible to him who believes, Mark 9:23. And another review says, read against my will, truly nauseating, 1 star. Sorry if I subjected you to that against your will as well, but I couldn't help it. It's too entertaining. It's too sickeningly entertaining. I am happy to have this book in my possession though. It feels like an MLM relic, like a piece of history that I'm gonna hold on to for my collection. I'm gonna put it right up there by my Beachbodyopoly game. And I am so appreciative to the writer of this horror story for bringing it to my attention so that we could all enjoy that together. Is enjoy the right word? I don't know. That we can all be horrified by it together. Thank you for sending in this story. This story says, hey Hannah, I would like my name kept out, thanks. Longtime watcher, first time submitter of my experience with MLMs. I've basically grown up around MLMs since I was raised in a family that went to a mega church. A church that hosts 1,000 or more folks per service is usually considered a mega church, but ours was something like 3,000 people per service. As you've mentioned in the past, church environments seem to be swarmed with Huns because a lot of stay-at-home moms in the faith tend to be preyed upon by these uplines who know they have access to a community. Oh, the stories I could tell you about the anointing oil this doTERRA lady tried to pitch the senior pastor, or the time a Mary Kay lady smeared face cream onto me coming out of kids' church and I had a bad reaction. The story I want to share today, though, is a bit on the sadder side. This is about a man who was a very good friend to me at the church. I'll call him Joe. Joe was a bigger guy who loved to dance up front during praise and worship. He looked a bit like a cross between a happy Santa and a biker dude, but he was a lot of fun to be around, and oftentimes I would be up front with him dancing. We made it a habit to check in with each other before service and ask how life is. He sort of became like an an uncle to me since I started attending the adult service. I was 20 at the time. Joe one day told me that he was so excited because he finally found something more natural that might help him get into shape. It was called New You Life, which I don't think I've heard you mention before, and I'll go over it quickly. They're one of these homeopathic supplement/drink MLMs, but this one included HGH, human growth hormone. We learned later from his wife that he was told by his rep that he should drink these drinks 5 days on, 2 days off. He should exercise 2 hours a day and eat 600 calories. I didn't originally have the full details when he told me about it, but I did say that if he was seeing improvement, that I was tentatively interested in something that might help me. I'm a bigger gal myself, to lose some weight more naturally than diet pills. Joe strictly stuck to this new routine, and obviously it had a pretty significant impact, being so much exercise and so little calories that we all thought he was getting healthier. He did that thing where he brought in one of his old t-shirts and he put it on himself, and it was amazing to see just how much smaller he was. Until we got the call from the church's emergency prayer line that Joe was in the hospital in critical care. What Joe didn't know was that his heart couldn't take this level of exercise, and he had a heart attack at the gym. No one knew he was down until his wife didn't see him come home from the 24-hour fitness. Joe passed away at the age of 52. All of this to say that it's so super important that if you find yourself on a diet/lifestyle change, please check in with your doctor. Get a physical. Make sure this is right for your body. Those of us who are bigger need to remember that sudden dramatic changes can be risky if you don't have real medical professionals helping you. Joe meant well, and I'm sure the rep who sold him the drink mixes wouldn't have known the risk, but my heart aches thinking about him every April. I'll always miss dancing up front in the sanctuary with my fun church uncle. Much love to your kitties, no matter how chatty Zeke is, and your family. I'll probably be back with my other, maybe lighthearted stories. So the company that this story deals with is called New You Life, and I don't think I've ever heard of that company before. In fact, I had to look it up to make sure that it was an MLM. Sure enough, it is. Of course it is. It's definitely not one that's front of mind or one that we hear about pretty much ever on this channel. So I'm grateful that it comes up in stories, because then it gives me an opportunity to say the name of the company. And in doing that, a viewer out there might make connections for themselves that, oh, that was an MLM? Or yeah, I've heard about that. Or that explains that weird experience I had that one time. Or if they come into contact with it in the future, they now remember it from these videos. And just from poking around on their website, they appear to sell the same types of things that most MLMs do: pills, powders, supplements, body care items, you name it. And I just want to make it extremely clear for legal purposes that neither the writer of this story or myself are asserting that New You Life products caused this man's death. That's not what we're saying. What we are saying is that sometimes when people are involved in an MLM, the ways they pitch those products to other people are by saying that they're going to get great results really fast. And here's the regimen, here's the products to take, here's what you got to do. And in the case of Joe, he's dropping weight like crazy because he's working out excessively and not eating enough. And doing that in combination with taking this supplement from this company, it's not FDA approved, it's not regulated by anything, and it's being sold to you through an MLM model by this person who's looking to make a commission off of you. That's a recipe for disaster. And the big takeaway thing here is obviously do not engage in these kinds of behaviors without consulting a medical professional first. You cannot take the MLM rep's word for it as far as what's best for you and your health. Just because some guy selling New You Life supplements told you to work out this much and to eat this much and to take these products doesn't mean you have to listen to him, doesn't mean you should listen to him. Because as we can tell from this story, that can have detrimental outcomes. And just because somebody is dropping weight really fast does not mean they're healthy, does not mean they're doing it in a good way. And that's another issue with it too, is sometimes when you see people joining MLMs and they're taking these new supplements, but they're also doing these extreme health habits too, it's hard to kind of separate the two. It's like, oh, I'm on this new health journey and look at all this weight I'm dropping, and it's because of New You Life supplements. No, it's not. It's because you're over-exercising and undernourishing yourself. That's what caused the heart attack. That's what caused the death. A terrible, awful, horrific story, and I'm so sorry this happened to somebody so close to you that you really cared about. And again, we're not saying that these products caused this man's death, but in the grander scheme of things, MLM reps are notorious for preying on people with health conditions, pitching them a supplement or a way to cure those health conditions, and sometimes the person on the receiving end of that pitch is in such a vulnerable position that they just take that at face value and do whatever they say. Yeah, I want to get fit and healthy and lose weight. Sign me up. It's clearly working for you, or it's working for whoever's testimony you're telling me about right now. And this all plays into the bigger issue with MLMs of the whole preying on people's vulnerabilities and convincing them to do something that is probably not in their best interest and something they wouldn't otherwise do for that salesperson's own financial gain. I'm deeply sorry that this happened. Thank you for sharing this story, because there's a big lesson to be learned here. And with that, my friends, that's all the stories I have for you for today's MLM Horror Stories video. I always like to extend a huge thank you to the writers of these stories for being so vulnerable and so willing to have your experiences shared in this platform. Because of you, because of your stories, we're able to spread the word of the dangers of MLMs that much further, and I thank you so much for that. And again, thank you to Paired for sponsoring today's video. Be sure to check out that link in the description box below for a 7-day free trial plus 25% off Paired Premium. And if you have your own horror stories, go ahead and send those my way. My email can be found down below as well. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you in my next one real soon.